data, unfortunately, I have to update it. I haven't gotten around to updating it yet. I just updated a bunch of stuff in 244, and you guys are next. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anyway, because it's bed real estate prices that I pulled. I forget how many I pulled. We'll get to that in a second, too. These were sale listings as a function of sale prices in hundred thousands of dollars. So in other words, this is the number of houses on the market at that point between $0 and $100,000. Brings back our question about breaking it up. I actually did this one wrong myself. I should have gone 0 to 50, 50 to 100. Don't worry about that though. Between 100 and 150,000, that many. Between 150 and 200, that many. Between 2 and 100, 250,000, that many. This was on the market at that month, November of 2009. Apologies for 5-year-old data. My apologies. I should have updated it by now. Would you call this bell-shaped data? No. It's kind of hard to, isn't it? It's kind of hard to call it bell-shaped. When you're talking about symmetric data, if this side has this beautiful tail tailing off, you want this side to have that tail too. But it doesn't. It drops off much more severely. Or if you're looking at this side going, oh, look at that. This one, you want it to be, but it doesn't. It's got this big long tail on one side. We tend to call this skewed data, skewed. We'll come back to that. We'll come back to what makes it skewed momentarily. Let's talk about the measures of center. If you had to approximate any of the 3 measures for this data, what would you say? Mean, median, mode. Pick your favorite. Let me see hands. Tell me what it is. And when I say favorite, you might just pick the one that's easiest to calculate. That's possible too. I got to see hands on me. Everybody get a chance to think about it. Everybody get a chance to think about it. Let me see hands when you're ready to vote, because I want to hear your votes. Any of the 3 measures and your vote. Tell me your name again.
Michaela.
I knew that. I didn't though. Michaela, go ahead.
I'd say 3.5 for like the average.
3.5 for the average. How? Why? How did you do that?
I don't know, just like because I weighed them out.
You weighed them out. Are you matching the cookies on the sheet? See, remember on the last we did the average, we put our finger where the highest point was. Will that work now?
No.
It can't. We've got too many cookies on the far side of this tray, so we've got to slide our finger out to pick up those cookies. So in other words, Michaela says 3 1/4. You're about here. Maybe even further.
Yeah.
375?
Right.
No, 350. Right here. $350,000 for an average. Anybody want to contest that? It's a little bit less. Maybe 300.
Yeah,
No, maybe even a little less. Good, good. If we need more precision, what can we do? We can do the math. If we need more precision, do the math. About how many houses are in this sample? Ish. Total. If you had to give me a number. How many houses did I count? Gesundheit. How many houses did I count? And when I say count, I mean copy and put into Excel and then use Excel to organize. About 1,000? I gotta vote for 1,000 over there? 800? About 1,000? No, more? Less? Good. Okay, I don't have an answer because I lost the data. So, but I mean, ballpark it. There's 200. Here's about 120. There's about 125-ish. So 200, 300, that's 500, right? Maybe this is about another 500. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you can ballpark any way you want to. I think 1,000's a good estimate, decent estimate. Maybe a little bit less. But the important thing is, could you pull the individual numbers if you needed to? Could you approximate that?
Yeah.
Ish. What is it, ish?
20.
20? No, I'm not saying everybody has to have the same numbers either. Somebody can say that 15. Somebody can say that's 10. How about this? What's this? About 115? What's this? Yeah, Joy, what's this? You're doing a fantastic job if you need to do the math of doing the math. Because that's most of the math for this one is interpreting what those bars are. This is why I gave you the quiz I did today. If you did the Obamacare quiz, paying attention to those numbers. Right? Versus, if you did how many of you did the Obamacare quiz? Obamacare, good, most of you. Yes. It's the importance to be able to read those. Did you notice that the first Fox News graph had a bunch of horizontal lines that had no numbers attached to them? Which begs the question, why are they even there? I don't know. Gee, how do you use them to help you do your math on yours? Good, that's why they were there, so you guys could prove why the graph is misleading. Good for you. Anyway, point being, we have some votes for average. So it sounds like most of your guys' averages are in this range somewhere. Love it. Give me a median or a mode. Oh, please, tell me your name again.
Zach.
Zach, go.
Mode for maybe 1.75.
Good. Mode about 175,000. He's pulling the middle of the highest bar. I think that's a perfectly acceptable way of doing it. because it's the highest bar. Therefore, the mode is the most frequently occurring, 175. Boom. Any contestants? Contestions? Is that even a word? Anyone want to say anything different? Let's use a longer sentence. 175, we like it. How about a median? This is Anthony.
Yep.
Go ahead.
I'd say a median about 3.25.
Over this way, like the average. Good. Anybody who contests? Up higher. Median's up here. No, down this way. So maybe over here.
No, higher. 3.75.
Oh, 3.75. I'm sorry, not this far over. So, a couple votes for median here. Anybody say anything different? Tell me your name again, too. Eric, thank you, sir.
I think it's 3.
3, down here.
Yeah.
Any other votes? Love this. Here's what it ends up being. I actually calculated on the raw data. Come on now, you were there. There it is. The average is $301,000. This is without outliers. I'm going to come back to that momentarily. Average is $301,000. If you actually add up all the raw data, which I had before putting it into the graph, okay? And if you do it with precision, by estimating all the values, it comes up to almost exactly the same thing. Median, 275. Somebody said that, didn't they? I thought somebody did. Mode, boom, 175. Now, there were what are called outliers. Let's finish this one up and then we'll take our 5. I'm using a word we haven't even talked about in this class yet. How many of you have read the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell? Okay, it's a fantastic book if you get a chance over the summer. Great book to read. How many of you have heard the phrase outliers? A couple of you. You all know it very well by the end of this course. If you've heard of it, what does it mean? If you've heard of it, Aaron, help me out.
Numbers that are like so far away from where they got it.
They're so far away from typical that we have to view them differently. There were tons of them in this data set. There were houses on the sale for 1.4 million, 2.2 million, off the charts. Now, there are mathematical ways to quantify outliers, but we'll get into that as we go through this course together, I promise you, because we need to talk about how to quantify them as well. I quantified them a certain way using what's called an interquartile range, which we'll talk about in like 3 weeks, I promise. But I chopped those out. I said they're so expensive, we shouldn't be using them in the sample. And here's why. If I put them back in, essentially they'd be over there on that board. You have a house here, and then a house here, and a house here. Let me ask you a question. There weren't very many of them. I think there were ended up being like 50 or 60 of them over the entire 1,000 data set, but it wasn't a lot of houses. Would it change the mode at all, do you think? Would it change the modal value of a sale price? So it's 175 right now. Suppose I put a scattering of 1.2 million and 1.4 million dollar houses out there. Would it change the modal cost at all?
No.
Tell me why it wouldn't. I love that vote for no. Tell me why it wouldn't. Let me ask the question a different way. What's the only way it could change the modal price of a house?
There were more of them.
Janelle, say that again.
If there were more of them.
Right, there's about 200 houses that are at 175,000, right? The only way to change the modal value of that is to have like 220 houses at 1.2 million. Well, that didn't happen. They wouldn't be outliers then. Then I'd be like, what the hell's going on over there? And go, remember raising questions? I go, what the hell's going on? Let's go find out. Is that all from the same really expensive neighborhood? So, that didn't happen, which means, Janelle, thank you. That's why our mode's still 175. Boom. Mode stays the same, 175. Would it change the median? Now, I'm showing you here it doesn't. Why didn't it? If we added a bunch more houses over there, even if we use Rob's chopping, if we use his chopping, we've added more houses to chop on the far right side, which means we're going to be unbalanced from the chopping we did the first time, right? Because the first time we started chopping here and there, but now we're going to start chopping over there and there.
Because it'd be more like cookie crumbs than a cookie.
It's like crumbs. Say that again. That was wonderful, Sarah. Crumbs on the cookie.
It's more like the cookie crumbs and not a full cookie.
It's more like crumbs and not a full cookie if you're thinking of the cookies on a tray. That's a beautiful way of saying it. I gotta remember that. I won't, but I gotta remember it anyway. It's on video now. It's because there are a few of them over there. So yes, indeed, you have to chop them off and they're going to chop off these cheapest ones here. But remember how, when we were calculating the medians before, we ended up at some point in one bar? And then we said we can stop chopping now because we're in that one single bar. You're just going to be in a different place in that bar, a slightly different place because of the crumbs. So the 275 is right here, yes? Maybe before, when you stopped chopping, you were here. Maybe now you're here, but you're still in this bar. That's the point. The crumbs don't add up to enough cookies. If there are more crumbs that become cookies, they're not outliers anymore. Then we have to redefine what an outlier is. JT, go.
You could have had outliers below 100,000, like way below.
You could, but they weren't.
No.
No, you can. Data can go outliers left and right. It didn't in this data set. Because you can't go below $0. But you can get well above 800,000, especially in Bend. And this was during the craziness. 2009 was the craziness, the crazy time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can have outliers. You can have outliers in the middle, believe it or not. We'll talk about that momentarily. But in this particular data set, they were only on the one end. But what changed? The mean, the average changed, didn't it? Look what happened. If the average is 300,000, if you pull the outliers out, it's $100,000 more, or 33% more of that value, if you leave the outliers in. Why?
They cost so much.
You gotta balance the tray of cookies. So here you are, balancing it at $300,000. And what do we come and do? Put more cookies on that end. Not this end, that end. So what do you have to do with your hand? You've got to move it that way to balance those extra cookies, and you have to move it. I wasn't looking. I should brag about that. So that's where your hand would have to be to balance the extra crumbs. Yes, but there's enough crumbs to make the weight differential matter. That's why they don't often use averages talking about real estate. A couple very expensive houses can pull an average house price up quickly. And that's why people, and I never understood this, I'm on the board of directors of my HOA, which one of those this BS little quasi-governmental entities that exist only in Bend, I think, and other resort towns. No, they're ridiculous. They're ridiculous. And they're talking about, oh, this guy's built a 3,800 square foot house that is so awesome because he's going to sell it for $400,000 bucks. I'm thinking to myself, you're going to put a 3,800 square foot house on a lot that's a tenth of an acre. You're going to pay an exorbitant amount of money heating that thing in the winter. But you're excited because he's going to sell it for $400,000, assuming that somebody's going to pay that much for it. You see what I'm talking about? Because they get excited because it drives the average price per home in a neighborhood up. Average price per home. The dude down the street, before he went into foreclosure and bankrupted himself, I'm on the northeast side of town, which is very inexpensive compared to the rest of Bend. This dude, our house was worth like $250,000, I think, at the height of the craziness in Bend. Dude walks down, borrows $500,000, puts $250,000 of his own money into building a house in our neighborhood, tries to sell it for $1 million. I'm like, but brother, do you realize where you're building this house? Yeah. Like, look at mine. Look at yours, 3 times as big. Of course, he foreclosed on us. Or he bankrupted himself because he missed 3. They put it was one of those notices on the door I'd never seen before, taped to the doors, and my neighbor was riding home from work with look, what's that? You've missed 3 monthly payments of $3,500 each. That's when I felt my stomach just drop. $3,500 a month, and this dude missed 3 of them, bankrupted himself. 10 exact. That was like a vomit sound. Yes, that's what I felt like too. But that's the idea. People were stoked when he was building it because it's driving the average price of houses up. Only in your mind. Only in your mind. You shouldn't be talking about averages with house prices, especially in that case. It's ridiculous because you're getting an inflated look at the average. Let's take 5 and come back to talk about how we can deal with this, okay? Yeah.